It was the perfect marriage, or so everyone thought. A couple, admired by their friends and family, seemed to have it all: love, success, and a bond that had weathered years of ups and downs. But behind the smiles and picture-perfect moments, cracks were forming. He had started to drift, his attention captured by someone younger, someone who made him feel alive in a way he hadn't felt in years. His wife, who had stood by his side through thick and thin, could sense the change but chose to believe in their vows, hoping this was just a phase. Then, one day, everything came crashing down. He announced he was leaving, unapologetic and confident that this new relationship would bring him the happiness he believed he deserved. His wife was left heartbroken, blindsided by the betrayal. She tried to rebuild her life quietly, while he flaunted his new romance without a second thought. But as the days turned into weeks, the glitz of his new life started to wear off, and the cracks in his perfect dream began to show. Little did he know, life had its own way of balancing the scales. What started as his pursuit of happiness would soon lead him down a path he never saw coming. The question wasn't just about what he had done, it was about what would happen next. And trust me, karma had been paying attention all along. As he walked away from the life he had built, he felt an intoxicating mix of freedom and excitement. The woman he left his wife for was vibrant, adventurous, and full of the kind of energy he thought he'd been missing. Their time together felt like an escape, a world where responsibilities and the weight of his past didn't exist. He told himself he deserved this, that his happiness was worth whatever fallout came from his decision. But deep down, a small nagging voice kept asking, "What if you've made a mistake?" For his wife, the days that followed his departure were a blur of pain and confusion. The man she had loved and trusted for years was now a stranger, someone capable of walking out without looking back. Friends offered their sympathy, but she could sense their whispers behind closed doors. They wondered how she hadn't seen it coming, or why she hadn't been enough to keep him around. Every glance in the mirror felt like a cruel reminder of the years she had given to someone who had so easily discarded her. Yet, she resolved to move forward. If he could leave so easily, then maybe he was never truly hers to begin with. While he basked in the glow of his new relationship, reality began to creep in. The carefree, exciting version of his new partner soon gave way to something more complicated. She had her own expectations, her own demands, and a vision of their future that didn't always align with his. The passion that had drawn them together started to feel more like pressure. And though he didn't admit it to anyone, he began to miss the quiet stability he had left behind, the small, everyday moments he had once taken for granted. Meanwhile, his wife was finding her footing. At first, her world had revolved around the life they had built together. But now she was rediscovering parts of herself she had long neglected. She joined a local book club, started taking yoga classes, and even signed up for an art workshop she had always been curious about. These small steps weren't about erasing the pain, but about reclaiming her identity. She was no longer just his wife, she was someone with her own dreams, her own story. And as she grew stronger, she began to realize that losing him might not have been the tragedy she once thought it was. Things took a turn when he started noticing the cracks in his new relationship. The arguments became more frequent, and the carefree laughter that once filled their days was replaced by tense silences. He tried to ignore it, blaming the strain on work or outside stressors, but deep down, he knew the truth. The spark they had wasn't built to last. And with every passing day, he found himself haunted by memories of his old life, the warm meals shared at the dinner table, the way his wife used to know exactly what he needed without him having to say a word, the unspoken trust they had built over the years. What made it worse was how well his ex-wife seemed to be doing without him. Through mutual friends and social media, he caught glimpses of her new life. She looked happier, lighter, as if a weight had been lifted from her shoulders. She was attending events, meeting new people, and thriving in ways he hadn't expected. It stung more than he cared to admit. The life he thought he'd left behind wasn't falling apart in his absence. It was flourishing. As the cracks in his new relationship widened, he began to feel the weight of his choices. His partner, once the center of his world, now seemed to view him as a stepping stone, someone to help her achieve her own goals. The love he thought they shared started to feel transactional, and he couldn't shake the feeling that he had been used. The worst part? He had no one to blame but himself. On the other side of town, his ex-wife was finding new opportunities she never imagined. A chance encounter at one of her art workshops led to a promising new friendship with a kind and supportive man who seemed genuinely interested in her passions. Though she wasn't ready to dive into anything serious, it was a reminder that there was life and love beyond the heartbreak. For the first time in a long time, she felt hopeful about the future. As he wrestled with his regrets, karma began to weave its way into his life. The shiny facade of his new relationship crumbled further, revealing harsh truths he hadn't been prepared to face. His partner's priorities didn't include him, and he found himself increasingly isolated. The friends who had once celebrated his newfound freedom had distanced themselves, tired of the drama he brought into their lives. The world he had chosen started to feel smaller, lonelier. Still, he couldn't bring himself to admit defeat. He thought about reaching out to his ex-wife, apologizing, and asking for a second chance. But every time he picked up the phone, he hesitated. What could he say? That he had made a mistake? That he was sorry for the pain he had caused? He doubted she would even listen, let alone forgive him. And so, he remained stuck, trapped by his own decisions and the consequences they had unleashed. As days turned into weeks, his life began unraveling faster than he could control. The relationship he had abandoned everything for had turned cold, a stark contrast to the passionate whirlwind he had initially experienced. They argued over the smallest things: her late nights, his growing insecurities, and the distance that seemed to stretch between them, no matter how much time they spent together. The excitement had faded, leaving behind an uncomfortable truth: they weren't meant for each other. One night, after another bitter argument, she packed her bags and left without so much as a goodbye. He sat in the empty apartment, the silence deafening. The reality of his choices hit him like a tidal wave. He had traded years of love, trust, and commitment for a fleeting spark, only to find himself alone, surrounded by the wreckage of his decisions. Meanwhile, his ex-wife was blossoming in ways neither of them could have imagined. The new man she had met through her art workshop had become a steady presence in her life, offering kindness and support without expecting anything in return. He wasn't pushy or overbearing. He simply showed up, quietly proving that good people still existed. She found herself laughing more, rediscovering a joy she hadn't felt in years. Her career, too, had taken an unexpected turn. Encouraged by her newfound confidence, she decided to exhibit her artwork at a local gallery. To her surprise, the event was a success, drawing attention from art collectors and critics alike. For the first time in a long time, she felt seen not as someone's wife, not as a woman recovering from heartbreak, but as herself. Back in his empty apartment, he couldn't escape the memories of the life he had thrown away. He spent hours scrolling through old photos, revisiting the moments he once took for granted. The vacations, the holidays, even the mundane evenings spent watching TV together, all of it seemed so precious now. He realized too late that happiness had never been about excitement or novelty. It was about the quiet, enduring love he had once shared with her. One evening, fueled by regret and desperation, he decided to reach out. He rehearsed what he would say, crafting an apology he hoped would convey the depth of his remorse. He didn't expect forgiveness, but he needed her to know he was sorry. With trembling hands, he sent a message. "I know I don't deserve your time, but I just want to say I'm sorry for everything. You didn't deserve the way I treated you." When she saw the message, her heart skipped a beat. She hadn't heard from him in months, and though she had moved on in many ways, the wound he left still lingered. She debated whether to respond, unsure if she owed him anything. In the end, she decided to reply, not out of hope for reconciliation, but because she needed closure. Her response was calm and measured. "Thank you for apologizing. It hurt, but I've learned to let go. I hope you find peace, just as I found mine." He stared at her words, a bittersweet mix of relief and sorrow washing over him. Her forgiveness felt like a weight lifted, but it also cemented the reality that she had moved on, leaving him behind in the past he had so carelessly destroyed. For her, the message marked the final chapter of their story. She read his apology and felt a surprising sense of calm. She no longer needed his validation or his remorse to heal. She had rebuilt her life piece by piece, and while the scars remained, they were a testament to her resilience. Asa the months passed. Their lives continued to diverge. He tried to pick up the pieces, learning to live with the choices he had made. It wasn't easy, but it was a lesson he wouldn't soon forget. He started therapy, confronting the patterns and insecurities that had led him down this path. Slowly, he began to understand the value of what he had lost and the importance of cherishing what truly mattered. For her, life was filled with new beginnings. Her art career flourished, and she found love again, not in a rush to replace what was lost, but in a relationship built on mutual respect and understanding. She realized that the heartbreak she had endured had shaped her into someone stronger, someone who knew her worth and wouldn't settle for less. Their paths never crossed again, but the lessons they each learned remained. He learned that chasing fleeting happiness often comes at a cost far greater than anticipated. She learned that even the deepest pain can lead to growth and new opportunities. In the end, life moved forward for both of them. He carried the weight of his choices, hoping to become a better person. She walked confidently into her future, no longer defined by the heartbreak of her past. And somewhere in the balance of it all, karma had done its work, reminding them both that every choice has its consequences, and every ending, its new beginning.